1971 and served as the 17th Chief Election Commissioner of India. He's authored the book Social Marketing for Social Change, which has broken new ground in the field of development communication, and the more recent and undocumented Wonder, the Making of the Great Indian Election. Mr. Maulana Mahmood Madani, as I just mentioned, represents the third generation of a century-old legacy of struggle for freedom, equality, social justice, and human rights. Journalist, analyst Shankar Iyer scooped the news of India pledging its gold reserves with Bank of England in 1991 during its worst economic crisis since independence. His expose of the hush-hush operation brought home to Indians and the world the magnitude of India's woes. Accidental India, A History of the Nation's Passage Through Crisis and Change is his first book. Mr. Soumyaranjan Patnaik is the editor of Sambad, Odisha's largest circulated and most widely read vernacular newspaper. His foray into media does not confine to Sambad. He's also played a big role in bringing to Odisha's first private FM channel, Radio Chocolate. His vision of a strong, prosperous and corruption-free Odisha led him into politics. He was elected to the 11th Lok Sabha from Bhubaneswar on a Congress ticket, and he floated his own party, Aam Odisha Party, in 2013. Mr. Ashok Malik is a columnist who writes for leading Indian and international publication and focuses on Indian domestic politics and foreign trade policy and their increasing interplay, as well as on the broader process of globalization. In 2012, his book, India, Spirit of Enterprise, was published by Rowley Books. In the same year, he was made a member on the Bilateral Task Force on Perception commissioned by the Australia-India Institute, University of Melbourne, to make a recommendation on the relationship between the two countries. Well, I would now request Mr. Shankar Iyer to take this session forward. Thank you.
Good afternoon, everybody. It's typical of Prabhu Chawla to have a session on threat to independent writing after a session on reinterpreting the epics and reinterpreting history. So here we are. I'm laying the ground rules first. Maulana Sahab, 8 minutes har shakhs ko bolne ko milega. And then we will take more questions, so make it more interactive. I'll just lay, I'm supposed to be one of the panelists and the chair, but I'm going to play the role of just the chair, so we have more time to dwell on the subject. So just to give the broad outlook of the subject, the threat to independent writing. Sometimes, you know, the title hijacks the essence of the intent. When we speak of independent writing and the threat, it almost always becomes about the right to publish a cartoon or write a book on the erotica between deities. This kind of polarizes the discussion into emotional corners. What we need really is to create rational corners of reason. And that is what we will attempt, gentlemen, on the panel. Independent writing is about words, it's about authors, and it's about books. It's also about independent thought, which is the essence of democracy. More importantly, independent thinking is essential for evolution of humanity. Just imagine if there was no Copernicus and there was no independent thinking, you would still continue thinking the world was flat and that the sun was revolving around the earth. So, while we discuss, we have to have the larger picture about the writing and about the thought. The right to opine in a democracy is an essential quotient. The right to say, to believe that Lord Ganesh had cosmetic surgery is an essential right. Just as the right to dissent with that opinion is also an essential right. The right to be wrong and the right to be right is what holds democracy together. Democracy is basically a tripod of liberty, justice, and equality. They are constantly in contest. And it is only free opinion, free will that keeps this thing going, because 3 legs is not really a stable position. So your idea of liberty may violate somebody's idea of social justice. Just like somebody's idea of a home that is 30 stories has upset many people's idea of equality and justice. Is there a threat to independent writing in India? Of course there is. It's been a recurring punctuation in India's political opportunism. Something like 30 books have been banned, about a dozen have been banned regionally, and about 10 have survived the assault of power. We shouldn't get sort of trapped or detained by who, which author, what book, but the question is why? And always, it is about the politics of the time. No political party is innocent. There has been mindless waffling around the issue by every political party. And the idea of independent writing, liberty is always stranded, trapped by opportunism. There is also a flip side that we must recognize. Is liberty absolute? Absolutely not. Is my right to hold an opinion a right to insult, to slander, or hurt or damage? No. Which side is right or which side is wrong? It requires debate, it requires reading. When the Satanic Verses was banned, I remember asking the protesters in the early days if any of them had read it. Fact is, those who are protesting are neither in the business of writing or nor in the business of reading. They're in the business of banning. Wannabe politicians, young cubs in politics, in Maharashtra, where I was born, think the first step to stardom is to ban a book. Is the book offensive? Nobody really knows. Maybe, maybe not. Why not let the students choose? But that is too much to offer those who seek control. All of us, when we discuss about books, ban, independent writing, we always argue that the best way to challenge a view is to write another view. But you see, the here and now cannot wait for the later. Also, there is always politics involved. In India, opinion is often defined by numbers. Recently, we've had a group of people who I call the self-certified virtuous actually dictate what kind of laws will be passed in Parliament. Thankfully, that period has passed. What makes the task of governments difficult is that society requires order. And it is this obligation that makes all the protesters powerful. They leverage this. All you got to do is burn a few buses, burn a few copies, hold a dharna, and you're in business. I've been trying to recall, and I might want to ask the panelists also this. If there has been any instance of a protest not resulting in a ban, if a state actually stood up to the bullies. Independent writing is also about independent thought. It's not just about words. Artists have been forced into exile, books have been withdrawn preemptorily. And most importantly, some emotions are more valuable politically than other emotions. There is the tyranny of the state and the magistrate, but there is also the tyranny of the majority opinion. Remember, it's not just the state which does the banning or prevent independent thinking. It is the society which propels this movement. So as what Mills said, we must worry about the tyranny of the prevailing opinion, the tendency to impose status quo, and penalize those who think differently, those who write differently, who interpret differently. There is also one fear now which I underline, which applies to journalism, which is the first draft of history, which also applies to writing of books, because after all it's commerce. And that is from the proponents of the bottom line. There is dumbing down of content, which makes it difficult for the next generation, or even those who are first exposure to a subject, to ask the right question. I'm going to end my worry and why we must worry. If opinion is silenced, more often than not, it gives reason for subscription to that opinion. When opinion is silenced, society is robbed of the opportunity to challenge it or accept it. When opinion is stifled, the progress of human thought, the great grand exploration which has brought humanity this far, is denied. Finally, opinion is the infrastructure of democracy. When we check it, stifle it, silence it, we are weakening the very sustenance of democracy. With that, I'll propose to start first with Ashok Malik so that he can set the ground. My request to all the panelists is, while we are discussing the threat to independent writing, one solution at the end on how this could be resolved, because we've been discussing this, I think, for decades, as to how this could be resolved. I mean, is there a dialogue, a platform, a medium, whatever? Ashok first.
Thank you, Shankar. Thank you to the editors of the New Indian Express for inviting me, to Mr. Chawla and Shampa, both of whom are old colleagues and seniors. Since we have very little time, I have 6 points to make. One, as Shankar very correctly put it, freedom of expression is not absolute. I would argue there is a flaw which is universal, a flaw for freedom of expression, for freedom of speech and thought. But the ceiling is certainly not universal. The ceiling varies from, the ceiling varies from society to society, from country to country. It doesn't give me any pleasure to say this, but it varies from stage of development to stage of development in the society. In India, as opposed to the West, we have a right to free expression. But unlike the West, we don't have a right to offend. And this is extremely important to understand while discussing absolute notions of freedom of expression and freedom of speech, because frankly they mean different things in India and in the West. This is again not something I necessarily advocate or support, but it's just reality. I'll give you one example. There are many people in this room who have worked for a newspaper. 2 people in this panel have worked for a newspaper. As newspaper editors or as gatekeepers in a newspaper, I don't think in an Indian paper we would ever have published a satirical cartoon of the Prophet Muhammad. And this is not necessarily because we would have feared being attacked by a crowd or feared violence. We would have said, no, we're not doing it. Let's move on to something else. But it is perfectly understandable for an editor in Denmark, which is a very different society, to say such a cartoon is absolutely fine, it's par for the course in my society, it works. So different societies, different thought processes would approach the same stimulus very, very differently. So what is freedom of expression in India what is sort of offensive in India may be seen as freedom of expression in another country. So we need to keep that in mind. Third, how have books been banned in India? If you interrogate the process by which books are being banned or have been threatened, or the independent narrative has been threatened, you start, of course, with government action. Government action has generally come down on books which have attacked individuals in politics or individuals in history, or of course religious themes. That's not the only case. There's the famous case of a book written in 1959 by a Time magazine correspondent in India called Alexander Campbell, who was a Scotsman based in India, who wrote a book called Journey to the Heart of India, I'm not mistaken. This book is freely available on the internet. I've read it, downloaded it and read it on the internet. It's still banned in India. It was written just after the second five-year plan was instituted and the Planning Commission had been set up. And it poked fun at planning, the process of setting targets. It tore into Nehru's idea of a micro-planned and developed and monitored economic growth and development. It just tore into it and said this can never work. The book was banned because it went against the then prevailing wisdom of socialism and of a planned economy. It was seen as heresy. Now, today, 50 years later, many of us have written articles which have been much more critical of the planned economy and of the planning process. The Planning Commission is being dismantled even as we speak, but the book remains banned. So it's not just religious themes or biographies of Shivaji or of the Prophet which get banned. It's also sometimes something which is not seen as politically correct by the prevailing establishment. I would argue that after the Salman Rushdie case, after the negative publicity India got following the premature and very quick ban of the Salman Rushdie book, Satanic Verses, even before the book had arrived in India, and the book was actually banned by the Ministry of Finance, which did not allow an import. After that, governments have become a little smarter. They don't, generally speaking, the central government doesn't ban books. Sometimes state governments and district authorities place temporary prohibitions, which are often lifted. But the veto after that Salman Rushdie case has actually moved to the street. And this is that much more difficult to challenge and to actually set aside. Because formally there is no ban, but informally the written word, an independent thought, as you put it, is being censored and is being checked at every stage. I'll give you 2 or 3 examples. 2 years ago, Salman Rushdie was invited to the Jaipur Literary Festival. He was going to speak there. He wasn't going to speak about Satanic Verses, which rightly or wrongly is still banned in India. But, and certainly his book, while it is banned in India, his entry into India is not banned. His ability to come here and give a speech on any subject under the sun is not in question. But it was an election year in Rajasthan. 5 or 6 people landed up and said we would protest. The Congress government of the time decided this was too convenient and too inconvenient and said, we don't want him here. A second example, look at what happened to Rohinton Mistri's Such a Fine Journey, his book on Bombay, which was a very, very old book. But there was some reference which the youth Shiv Sena objected to, and the book was, without the government moving in, taken out of the curriculum of Bombay University. Or most recently, look at the Wendy Doniger book, which is a book I have read, I have reviewed. I've liked it in parts, I've disagreed with it in parts, and I wrote a very critical review. And certainly I think Wendy Doniger just does not get contemporary political Hinduism. She just does not understand it. Having said that, how has the book been removed? The book has been removed not by a court order, not by a government ban, and frankly, if the matter had been fought out in court, with Penguin India, the publisher, getting itself a very good lawyer, they would probably have won the case, but they would have had to spend a lot of money getting a good lawyer. So instead, they decided that they took the line of least resistance and said, we will pulp whatever copies we have and we won't publish any more books. Now, it's interesting to try and understand why Penguin did this and why publishers are choosing the line of least resistance now. Sorry? Sorry, okay. Why are they taking the line of least resistance? Where was I? Sorry. Wendy Doniger, yeah. Okay. Now, Wendy Doniger's book came out in the year 2007. It's a quasi-academic book dealing with the theme of religious history. It has very few readers and buyers in India. Penguin must have figured that the number of copies we have to sell in this country have been sold. This book is past its shelf life in India. Those who are really interested in it now will probably buy it on Kindle or order it on Amazon and have it delivered at home or buy it abroad. There's no big market for it. So the choice before us is to uphold the principle of freedom of speech hire a very, very expensive lawyer, who, Abhishek Manu Sangvi, Kapil Sibal, Arun Jaitley, whoever it is, pay him a huge fee and ask him to fight it out for us, which would take a long time, which would make the lawyer very rich, but would probably uphold freedom of speech, but would leave Penguin without a lot of money and with no guarantee of the book selling many, many more copies and recovering that money. So it is decided now, let's just pulp the book. If this had been a Hindi film, if this had been, to give an example, the film Singh is King, made by Akshay Kumar some years ago, ran into trouble with the Sikh community. And what did Akshay Kumar and the producers do? They went straight to the Golden Temple, they met every Sikh Granthi, every Sikh Guru, every Sikh religious preacher possible. They deleted scenes from the film and said, no, we must go ahead. We will do anything you want, but this film will go ahead. Because there was much more money riding on that project. Singh is King was going to make much more money than poor old Wendy Doniger's book. And that sometimes becomes a key issue, why the sheer economics of the book trade militate against upholding this principle of freedom of expression. And I'd like to end with what this is leaving us with. This is leaving us with a very strange situation where the interrogation of religious themes, the interrogation of religion, or the interrogation of a historical character or phenomenon in a country is becoming more and more difficult to do in India because people tend to avoid it. We are a strange country and a strange society that is very, very religious. This is among the most religious in the world. And yet, in our writings, we shy away from a serious interrogation of religion and a serious scholarship which looks at religious themes and religious issues. So the best Indology, the best study of, or not the best necessarily, but most of the study of our religious institution, religious themes and religious icons ends up being done in universities in the West. Sometimes it's good, sometimes it's puerile and rubbish. But we have exported it and said we can't do it here. If I go to a publisher tomorrow and say I want to write a serious book on did Krishna exist? Is he a historical figure? What is the evidence? Or if I want to write a book on the human being called Muhammad as opposed to the divine figure, 9 times out of 10 the publisher will give me a cup of tea and say, why don't you write on something else? Yeah? Write on Vajpayee, write on Modi, write on Naveen Patnaik. Why do you want to write on these themes? And that is a fact we can't run away from. Do I have a solution? I think we are one defining court case away from setting some ground rules. But that court case will cost a lot of money because our lawyers don't come cheap. And finally, I'll go back to something Atal Bihari Vajpayee said as Prime Minister when he was asked to ban a book. He turned down the request or the demand with a simple throwaway line, Kitab ka jawab, kitab se do. That's it.
The interesting thing that you said about Alexander's book on the planning process, I had a similar taste when my book Accidental India was released, which proves with evidence that the architect of India's 1991 reforms was the IMF and not Dr. Manmohan Singh. I don't know whether Dr. Manmohan Singh was upset, but a couple of editors to whom the book went were deeply upset. So it's always the prevailing societal norms as to which side you want to be at what time of the day that also decides. May I request Dr. Patnaik to speak, please?
Let me at the outset thank you, compliment and congratulate Indian Express and Prabhu Chawla ji for making this into a habit of having a literary festival here. It started innovatively and now I find his worthy competitors are also taken to it. Orissa, of all the places, is having more than 4 festivals in a year. Orissa is famous for festivals. That makes us that much more lazy and less amenable to work. Festivals are always welcome, therefore I thank you. But I must confess I will not be getting into the debate about freedom of expression, banning of books. I'm a little uncomfortable with the topic. Independent writing. I don't simply accept the topic as independent writing. A writer is always independent. Is there something called dependent writers? If you are talking about independent writing, then you must be having in your mind somebody who is very dependent. This is the hangover of the liberal past. And we in the newspaper always keep saying that I'm an independent newspaper. I don't think there is anything called independent newspaper. Those who are saying that they're independent newspaper, they are literally fraud. I strongly believe there is nothing wrong in owning of your convictions. This is what I believe, take it or leave it. That should be the motto of a writer. A writer is known by his readers. In my mind, readership is the measure of a real writer. And the threat to independent writing, if there is any, in my view, I'll take you to a different world, is what is happening to your readership. All the surveys in India and world over are giving a very dismal picture. Dwindling readership. In the English language, it is still dwindling. Maybe we are lucky in the vernacular, literacy is growing, maybe another 10, 20 years, we'll bask in the luxury of some incremental readership growth. But by and large, less number of people are reading today. When in a literary festival you are talking about literature, freedom, expression, you must worry about, if you do not have readers, then where is your literature? Where is your freedom? Who are you writing for? A writer, his target audience is getting confused. He doesn't know. Ban comes only when you have an audience. If there is no audience for you, the ban has no meaning. And most of the ban cases I can illustrate, like the films are being banned, that is a marketing strategy in banning. Ban ho jayega to acha bikegi. How many people have read satanic verses in India? Quite a few. Those who wanted to read it, they have managed to read it. So banning is not necessarily a bad thing as such. It is a political compulsion. It is our own democratic compulsion that we are banning. We can't manage things, therefore we are banning. So my take is, first of all, the threat is from the dwindling readership. इससे मुझे याद आता है, long time back when we were in school, somebody asked me, what is the difference between an artist and a painter? The typical Reader's Digest answer is, an artist is one who sells what he writes or paints. A painter paints what he can sell. He paints what he sells, or he paints what sells, and an artist sells what he paints. Obviously, threat for a writer is, can he make a living out of it? The biggest threat for a writer is, if he cannot make a living out of writing alone, writing becomes a secondary preoccupation. As long as writing does not become a primary preoccupation, you cannot live on it, you cannot depend on it, you cannot be independent. Newspapers have always played a very significant role in promoting literature. There was a good, I remember, the journalists are always looked down upon by the literary people. Whether a journalist can be taken as a serious writer or not is always a question. I don't mind being condemned, no problem. But people who are basking in the glory of literature must remember, if the newspapers do not look after you, you will be nowhere. Today, the newspapers are the biggest promoter of literature. More so the vernacular, the language, the regional language literature should be beholden to the newspapers if they are surviving. The biggest threat in that connection is when newspapers or the media becomes the primary route, the ownership of media is the biggest threat. The corporate ownership, the way the media is now owned today in India, and the way things are moving, I don't know, 10 years down the line, what will be the position. One who pays the piper plays the tune. And that will be the motto everywhere. And we in the newspaper know what it takes to be very free in the newspaper. It is nothing comes free. We are dependent on advertisements, sponsors, and paid news. We are talking all about all these things. It has become everyday habit with all media houses. Sometimes people like small people are visible, big ones are not visible. The second threat, this is perhaps not a threat, it's a culture shift, is the technology. If readership is dwindling, I'm saying the printed words are having less of a target now. Printed words are replaced by online writing. And our people, our readers today, are more into internet and online reading. Digital books, you may say so. This online reading habit has given us tremendous exposure, access. Scope is unlimited. That is the danger, threat. So much is the scope, so much is the access. Almost everybody can, but it lacks seriousness. Look at what happens. Look at the Twitter, look at the social media that you have every day. 90% is rubbish. In order to get 10% seriousness, you have to accept 90% rubbish. I only hope it is a temporary phenomena. People are now overexcited about the new possibility. Days to come, like it happened with other medium, this will also calm down and we will have better things to offer in the digital platform. But that is the future. Finally, if ownership of media is the threat, one has to look at it very seriously. If technology and our lifestyle has become such that we may be not having enough time, energy, and inclination to think freely or to accept a free idea. And finally, our market economy, the kind of market economy is much more dangerous today than the totalitarian states and the one economy state, one market state that we had in before. I think we all are so excited about growth, so excited about per capita income, so excited about feel-good factor. I think the reading public is so insulated against an alternative view. One doesn't understand. If there is any solution that is necessary, is to dismantle this mindset that market economy is the only economy that is going to work. Investment is the only solution to all our economic ills, and growth in the trickle-down process will generate enough to give to the person at the lowest ebb of the society. These are all Keynesian economics coming down from West. It is not going to help us. If anything, one poor person can be helped only when you identify a rich person. एक अमीर आदमी तभी बनता है जब 10 आदमी को आप गरीब करते हैं. 10 आदमी गरीब नहीं होने से एक अमीर आदमी नहीं पैदा होगा. बात यह है, ये 10 आदमी को गरीब करने में हम लोग इस हद तक तुले हुए हैं कि हमको लग नहीं रहा है कि इस पॉवर्टी का अंत होगा. जब तक poverty will remain, inequity will remain, and democracy will be your guiding principle, this kind of banning of books, managing politics, and trying to balance and becoming politically successful and economically wrong and socially absolutely absurd will be the bane of our politicians. Thank you.
I know Mr. Patnaik must have thrilled some people in the audience because he raised the essential quotient about the tyranny of economics and the tyranny of doctrine. But the more important thing, what you said, is the threat of technology and the so-called popularity, the tyranny of popularity. All of it comes back to prevailing opinion. I now invite Maulana Madni. آپ وہاں سے بولیں گے یہاں آئیں گے؟
میں تو چاہتا تھا کہ ڈاکٹر قریشی صاحب کے پاس کے بعد مجھے موقع ملتا بات کرنے کا، لیکن
میں نے اندازے بیان کیا کہ عمر کا تقاضا کرتے ہیں اور اس سیریز میں
نہیں، میں تو چھوٹا ہوں.
Although I may have made an error because Mr. Patnaik looks younger than both of you.
Why don't you say you are keeping to the left?
جی فرمائیں.
بات ایسی ہے کہ جب آزادی، اظہار رائے کی، ایکسپریشن کی آزادی، فریڈم، اور اسپیچ کی، بولنے کی آزادی، تو اس پر میں سمجھتا ہوں کوئی ڈاؤٹ نہیں کرنا چاہیے کہ کوئی آدمی یہ کہے گا کہ بولنے کی آزادی نہیں ہونی چاہیے. بلکہ میں سمجھتا ہوں کہ بولنے کی اور اظہار کرنے کی جو آزادی ہے، یہ انسان کا فنڈامنٹل رائٹ ہے، بنیادی حق ہے. اگر یہ حق کسی انسان سے چھین لیا جائے، کسی بھی انسان سے، آپ نے ایک بات کہی کہ اس پر وہ لوگ زیادہ ہیں، وہی لوگ ہیں جن کا نہ کام پڑھنے کا ہے نہ لکھنے کا ہے، لیکن ان کو بھی، جنہوں کا کام پڑھنے لکھنے کا نہیں ہے، ان کو بھی حق ہے، سارے انسانوں کو حق ہے اپنی رائے کے اظہار کرنے کا، اور اس حق کو انسان سے نہیں چھینا جا سکتا. اب یہاں ایک بڑی تھریٹ پرسیپشن ہے کہ کتابوں کا بین کرنے کی وجہ سے یا کسی آرٹسٹ کنٹری میں آنے پر روک لگ جانے کی وجہ سے یا ایسے انوائرمنٹ کریٹ ہو جانے کی وجہ سے کہ وہ کنٹری چھوڑ کے چلا جائے، اس کی وجہ سے ایسا لگتا ہے کہ یہ سوسائٹی جو ہے ٹولریٹ نہیں کر سکتی سچ کو. لیکن میں یہاں تھوڑا سا آپ سے اپنا پوائنٹ اس طرح سے رکھنا چاہوں گا کہ جو اظہار کرنے والا ہے اس کے بھی کچھ ذمہ داریاں ہوتی ہیں، رسپانسبلٹیز ہوتی ہیں. یہ صحیح ہے کہ سوچنا اور سوچ کر اس بیریئر کو توڑنا، باہر نکلنا، یہ تھنکر کے لیے آپ اس کی باؤنڈری بنا کر اس کو بند کریں کہ اسی کے بیچ میں سوچو گے تم، یہ مشکل کام. یہ بھی ایک سچائی ہے، اس کو ماننا پڑے گا کہ جو سوچتے ہیں اور سوچنے کے بعد ایک رائے قائم کرتے ہیں، ایک ان کا ایک فلسفی بنتی ہے، اس کے بعد وہ اس کو لکھتے ہیں، تو اس کو باکس میں بند نہیں کیا جا سکتا، لیکن پریزنٹ کرنے کے طریقے کے بارے میں تو بات ہو سکتی ہے. کہ آپ کے پریزنٹ کرنے کا طریقہ کیا ہے. کتاب کا جواب کتاب ہی سے دیا جانا چاہیے. یہ بالکل صحیح بات ہے کہ جو بات جس طرح کہی جا رہی ہے اسی طرح اس کا جواب دیا جائے. لیکن کئی مرتبہ بات اس طرح بھونڈے انداز میں کہی جاتی ہے کہ اس بھونڈی بات کا جواب بھونڈے انداز سے دیا جائے تو پھر وہ اور وہ سب برابر ہو جائیں گے. تو ہم ایسا سمجھتے ہیں کہ ریئیکٹ کرنے کا جو طریقہ لوگ اختیار کرتے ہیں، ڈنڈے کا اور طاقت کا استعمال کرتے ہیں، وہ بالکل غلط ہے، کبھی نہیں ہونا چاہیے. لیکن اپنی تھاٹ کو، اپنی سوچ کو، بہت ساری سوچ، اور یہ انسان کا دماغ جو ہے مینڈک کی طرح اچھلتا رہتا ہے، بیٹھا نہیں رہتا، آرام سے نہیں بیٹھتا. یہ تو اپنا کام کرتا رہتا ہے. اور بہت ساری باتیں ہم لوگ الگ الگ وقت میں ایسی سوچتے ہیں جس کو ہم لوگوں کے سامنے ایکسپریس کر ہی نہیں سکتے، کبھی نہیں کر سکتے. 90% ہماری سوچ جو ہے وہ لوگوں کے سامنے ظاہر نہیں ہم کر سکتے، چاہے جتنے بہادر آدمی ہوں.
ہاں، لائیو ٹیلی کاسٹ نہیں ہو سکتا ہے.
تو یہ انسان کا یہ نیچر ہے، یہ چلتا ہے. ہم کیا چیز پریزنٹ کرتے ہیں لوگوں کے سامنے، اپنی فیملی کے سامنے، اپنے بچوں کے سامنے، اپنے پیرنٹس کے سامنے، دوستوں کے سامنے اور سوسائٹی کے سامنے، وہ ہمیشہ ریفائن کر کے آتی ہے چیز. ہمیشہ ہر آدمی کتنا بھی سچا آدمی ہو وہ ریفائن کر کے چیزوں کو سامنے لے کر کے آتا ہے، کیونکہ وہ تو پھر تو بے وقوفی ہو جائے گی، عقل مند آدمی نہیں کہلائے گا، پاگل ہوگا. تو جب ہم اپنا کوئی بھی چیز ہم ایکسپریس کر رہے ہیں، ظاہر کر رہے ہیں، بول رہے ہیں، تو ہمیں ایک جس طرح ہم اپنی روزانہ کی زندگی میں چیزوں کو ٹھیک طریقے سے رکھتے ہیں، اسی طرح دوسری چیزوں کو بھی، ساری چیزوں کو ٹھیک سے رکھا جانا چاہیے. ڈفرینس آف اوپینین، اپنی ایک اوپینین بنانا اور اس کو پیش کرنا، یہ بالکل الگ بات ہے. لیکن اس کو اس انداز سے پیش کرنا کہ دوسرے کو تکلیف پہنچ جائے، ٹھیس پہنچ جائے، یہ تو کوئی اچھا ادیب نہیں کر سکتا. ہم لوگ اردو میں ادیب بولتے ہیں، تو وہ ادب سے بنا ہے اور اس کی بہت اونچا مقام ہوتا ہے، بہت ہی اونچا مقام ہوتا ہے. تو آپ اس مقام سے نیچے اتر گئے، اپنے چیزوں کو فریڈم آف اسپیچ کے نام پہ، ایکسپریشن کے نام پر اس طرح پریزنٹ کرنا شروع کر دیا. قانون بھی موجود ہے اس کے لیے، لیکن قانون کو تو بدلا جا سکتا ہے، کل کو پھر نیا ایکٹ بنا لیا جائے گا تو وہ کوئی ایشو نہیں ہے. بین، آج بین لگا ہوا ہے، کل کو بین ختم ہو جائے گا. سوسائٹی چینج ہوگی، لوگ سوچنے کا انداز بدلے گا، کہنے کا انداز لوگوں کا بدلے گا. تو زیادہ ضروری کیا ہے، میں ایسا سمجھتا ہوں کہ ایک ادیب کے لیے زیادہ ضروری یہ ہے کہ وہ اپنی بات کو اسی انداز سے پیش کریں، بالکل کہیں، کوئی بات مت روکیں. جتنی باتیں جتنے لوگوں نے کہی ہیں، جن پر کنٹروورسی کھڑی ہوئی ہے یہاں پہ یا وہاں پہ کہیں بھی، اسی بات کو اگر اچھے انداز سے پیش کر دیا جائے تو میں نہیں سمجھتا کہ کوئی بہت زیادہ بڑی کنٹروورسی کھڑی ہوگی، اس کا جواب بھی دیا جا سکے گا. تو بہرحال اس پہ تو کوئی کمپرومائز نہیں کرنا چاہیے، کیا فریڈم ختم ہو جائے اور یا اس کے اوپر کوئی سینسر لگا دیا جائے کہ آپ یہ بول سکتے ہیں یا نہیں بول سکتے. بولنا تو، سوچنا اور بولنا تو آدمی کا بنیادی حق ہے.
So basically, if I've surmised you right, what you're saying is that you're advocating some kind of restraint, self-censorship on the way things are presented as an argument. When you advocate something, you have to have a certain nuance and a certain respect for the dignity of the others. And a different opinion does not necessarily mean a ground for creating differences. So کئی سارے سوال اس میں اور اٹھتے ہیں مولانا صاحب، میں آپ کے پاس پھر آؤں گا. कुछ मुल्कों में ये भी हो रहा है कि वहाँ पर अगले की सुनवाई नहीं हो रही है. हमारे यहाँ सुनने से लोग बोलने से कतराते हैं कई सिचुएशन में. Mr. Patnaik made this reference about independence of media, which is a very serious issue when it comes to who owns and which piper from Hamelin is calling the tune. But let me not detain you. Let me ask Mr. Qureshi to come in on this. As a civil servant, as somebody who's seen these issues and who has managed elections, where probably opinion is most divisive, his views would be interesting.
Thank you, Shankar. I've been here since morning and everybody starts by thanking Mr. Prabhu Chawla. It's quite clear whether it's Prabhu here or Prabhu there, you can't thank him enough. So let me therefore not be found guilty.
You can't have a difference of opinion there. No independent thinking.
You know, there is a disadvantage and an advantage of being the last speaker. The disadvantage is that all the good points in my basket have already been stolen. But then many more have come in because I can react and respond to some of the things which I heard. It's very clear that the entire debate revolves around the freedom of speech and expression. And there is no doubt that this freedom is the most fundamental right. I would even say it is the most fundamental human right. But at the same time, we should realize that we have fundamental rights because we live in a civilized society. And in civilized society, you also have to compromise, you sacrifice your freedom. Otherwise, you have the rule of the jungle. Normal expression is law of the jungle, but I'm not using that deliberately because if there was law, the law means some regulation. There is no law in the jungle. Now, obviously, we have opted to live in a society, and therefore we have opted for some discipline. We are a civilized society. That's why we have a constitution, a great constitution. And Article 19 is the fountainhead of this freedom of expression, which everybody quotes whenever this debate arises. And at the same time, they all forget that the same article, the very next section, talks of some restrictions. Although I remember, and it's very important to remember what those restrictions are. Although I remember these restrictions by heart, but I have deliberately opened the book to let you know that I have written a book. And what are these restrictions? You have the freedom of expression, also reasonable restrictions in the interest of, please listen to this carefully, sovereignty and integrity of India, the security of the state, friendly relations with foreign states. This is very important because this is something which all media channels are violating all the time, the way we talk about the foreign states. Constitution has asked for restriction on that because you don't imagine the kind of problems you create and complications you create for our foreign ministry by all your loose talk. Constitution forbids you to do that. Then public order. I'm a civil servant, 40 years standing, whom you were lovingly called Babu. I proudly say, yes, I'm a Babu, I'm conservative. For me, public order, law and order is extremely important. And Constitution talks about that. Public order. Preserving decency. That is what I think Maulana very aptly referred to, decency. Now, decency has to be self-determined first, but obviously the Constitution expected that. Preserving morality in relation to contempt of court, defamation, and incitement to an offense. It's a very wide-ranging restraint that it talks about. Then here I think in the entire debate we suffer from double standards and I would even say hypocrisy, because I have a right of expression, he doesn't. I will demand ban, he should not demand ban. That seems to be a double standard, and we see it all the time. If some group is demanding it, the others are opposing it tooth and nail, and vice versa. We should know that one man, cliche, one man's meat is another man's poison. Writing which could be seditious in some context, treason for one, it is freedom fighters' writing. On the basis of such writings, we got freedom, and then at the same time, if somebody else attempts to do that. Libel is a legal reality. Now, in the entire debate, I would also like to emphasize, when you use your right to freedom of expression, your intention is very important. Niyat, not important. If the niyat is mischief, something is wrong there. If the intention is really to express something which you honestly believe, and then there is a way of saying it, I think that's very, very important. Well, do we have freedom to cheat, for instance? In the election context, we used to have two debates, very often on the media, about opinion polls and social media. Should we have opinion polls? Why does the election commission want to ban it? Well, all political parties demand, because you have freedom to express your opinion, but you have no freedom to cheat. You don't have freedom to disinform. Although I've read some editorials, some newspapers who say, yes, I have a freedom to disinform, I have a freedom to cheat. I don't know whether that's a subject to interpretation. Then if you have disagreement, can you resort to direct action, violence? Certainly not. There are legal channels. Redress is available. And Ashok very aptly referred to Mr. Vajpayee saying, "Kitab ka jawab kitab se do." But I suddenly was reminded of Mahatma Gandhi, if we follow the policy of eye for an eye, very soon we'll all be blind. So therefore, that is also probably not a very good idea. Then you say that you should, before demanding ban, I've heard it many times on the TV channel, that before demanding ban, have you read it? Have you read it? Now there is a great marketing strategy you are giving me. If I want to sell my book, I make it very controversial, because then the more controversial it is, the more of you will read it. And then only you can demand ban. And by then demand will not mean anything. Ban will mean not anything, because you have already read it. And I'm laughing my way to the bank. So therefore, also that logic is also facetious for me.
May I interject, sir? But how do you protest about something that you have no idea about?
No. Because, but you answered to me, because before protesting, you should have read it, and therefore the more controversial you are, the more people have read it, and then there is no need for a demand then altogether. But then, eye for an eye, I'll write an equally nasty book, then where are we heading? Then the country will be on fire. Similarly, now when social media, there was talk about control of social media. Everybody went to town, no, how can you ban social media? It's against freedom of expression. And they say, how can you stop it? Now, you have no right to abuse me in your newspaper. You cannot abuse me on TV channels because I have a law. But you can surely abuse me on social media.
Yeah, regularly journalists are abused.
You abuse me on social media. That's a very stupid and ridiculous interpretation. Social media is also media. And nothing is above the law. Every media is under law, and so is social media. Second point, technology, somebody was talking about, how will you regulate it? It's impossible. Now again, that is not a good argument. It is very difficult to catch a rapist. Should we make it legal? It may be difficult, but you have to try. You have to make it illegal first, then you have to try, and then you will succeed. You will find your way. So then, finally, your question, who decides what is permissible and what is not? Surely, if I'll always be subjective. I think my decision is right. You are opposing me. You think you are right. It has to be a third person. Therefore, the legal, the judiciary, even the government, when it decides on a ban on a book, in the interest of law and order, you can't allow the country to burn. Therefore, but at the same time, self-restraint probably is the best thing. Mr. Natwar Singh in the morning mentioned in relation to reference to his meeting with Sonia Gandhi. He says what he reported from that meeting is only 30%. He used his freedom of expression, but he did not use other 70% using self-restraint. He curbed his own freedom of expression, but that is decency. That is what is very important. Thank you.
That was also, Mr. Natwar Singh, good insurance policy. Because if you were attacked on 30%, the 70% would have been much more damaging, I presume. I know Maulana Sahab has to catch a flight and leave. A large number of conclaves, Maulana Sahab, so I'm addressing this question, fir aap चाहें जब निकल सकते, सो मैं आपको वो छूट दे रहा हूँ. Large number of conflicts are about religious faith, religious beliefs, doctrines. In a multi-dimensional, heterogeneous society as ours, one view is always going to be antithetical to somebody else's belief or faith, because faith has no basis really, it is faith. That's why it's faith. So how do these things get resolved? Is there, in your experience as a scholar, has there been any interaction within the community, within the scholars, on how to deal with this? Can there be a platform to discuss this? मैं और मुल्कों की बात नहीं कर रहा हूं, मगर हमारे पड़ोस में तो मतलब एक ही कौम में से मतलब दूसरा कौम दो स्प्लिट है नहीं है, उसी पर विवाद चल रहा है, लेकिन मैं वहां नहीं जा रहा हूं. आई एम सेइंग इन बिटवीन, इन इंडिया, इन द इश्यू ऑफ religious freedom, which is part of the freedom of expression, on issues, if somebody writes a book tomorrow on conversion, I suspect there will be a deep discussion on it. It will be scandalous, controversial, all kinds of things will come out of it. On these kind of issues, where is the middle ground? Who's talking to whom?
देखिए, एक तो अपने फेथ की बात है, ये बहुत पर्सनल है, और मेरा फेथ किसी चीज़ पर क्यों है मैं दूसरे को समझाना मुश्किल काम है, फिर भी लोग समझाने की कोशिश करते हैं. कंट्रोवर्सी वहाँ होती है जहाँ आप या मैं किसी दूसरे के फेथ पर अटैक करूं और सवाल उठाऊं. डिबेट करना ये तो बहुत अच्छा है. कोई भी सोसाइटी अगर डिबेट करना छोड़ देगी, बहस करना छोड़ देगी, तो उसका थिंकिंग प्रोसेस रुक जाएगा. झगड़ा कहाँ होता है? वहां होता है जहां आप सवाल इस तरह उठाते हैं कि दूसरे की फीलिंग को तकलीफ होती, जो मैंने पहले भी कही थी आपसे बात. और पड़ोस की बात छोड़ ही दें तो बेहतर है. हमारे यहाँ इंडिया में भी विद इन द मुस्लिम्स बहुत सारे अलग अलग तरीकों से लोगों ने उसकी तशरीह करी है. इसको आपको इंग्लिश में कहना चाहें तो इंटरप्रिटेशन, डिफरेंट इंटरप्रिटेशन है डिफरेंट चीज़ों के. जिहाद का एक इंटरप्रिटेशन है, और उस इंटरप्रिटेशन पर लोग जो हैं वो बेकसूर लोगों को मार रहे हैं, खुद भी मर रहे हैं, दूसरों को भी मार रहे हैं, और एज ए टूल यूज कर रहे हैं जिहाद को और इस्लाम को. एक इंटरप्रिटेशन है उनका. एक दूसरा इंटरप्रिटेशन है जो ये कहता है कि ऐसे लोगों से लड़ना ही जिहाद है, जो ऐसी सोच के साथ इस्लाम को प्रेजेंट करने की कोशिश कर रहे हो. तो डिफरेंट इंटरप्रिटेशंस हैं, लेकिन वहां भी यही है. आप इंडिया में देखेंगे कि झगड़े होते हैं डिफरेंट फेथ के बीच में भी, और एक फेथ वालों के बीच में भी झगड़ा होता है. शिया सुन्नी का झगड़ा हो जाता है, वो हो जाता है. वो झगड़ा छोटी बात पे होता है, बेसिक चीजों के ऊपर झगड़ा नहीं होता. इवन नॉन मुस्लिम्स के बीच में और मुस्लिम्स के बीच में भी जो अगर वायलेंस की शक्ल वाला झगड़ा होता है, तो आप रीजन अगर ढूंढने जाएंगे तो वो साइकिल की टक्कर से शुरू होता है, या किसी और किसी जवान लड़के लड़की के आपस के ताल्लुक पे होता है. अब वो लड़के लड़की का ताल्लुक है, उसका किसी और चीज से कोई लेना देना नहीं है, लेकिन वो झगड़ा बन जाता है, उसमें रिलीजन और फेथ आ जाता है बीच में. हालांकि वो उसकी स्टार्टिंग और उस सारा जो कुछ भी हुआ है वो फेथ के ऊपर नहीं हुआ है. वो एक झगड़ा है, कॉमन झगड़ा है, साथ में रहते हैं तो झगड़ा भी होगा. ये नेचर है हमारे बीच में, झगड़ा ना हो या कभी नहीं हो सकता साथ रहने वाले लोगों के बीच में, चाहे एक फेथ के हो चाहे डिफरेंट फेथ के हो। वापस आता हूं मैं उसी बात के ऊपर कि जो चीज हद से बाहर निकलेगी वो चीज मुनासिब नहीं होगी, उस चीज को रुकना चाहिए। और जैसी ये सोसाइटी है हमारी, ऐसी वाइब्रेंट, ऐसी खूबसूरत, ऐसी मल्टी कल्चर, मल्टी रिलीजन, मल्टी लैंग्वेज, फला फला, इतना सारे, शायद दुनिया में कोई दूसरा मुल्क नहीं होगा जैसा ये हमारा देश है। और इसकी अजीब खूबसूरती है। मैं हमेशा ये बात कहा करता हूं कि मैं उन मुल्कों से जहां के जानवर हमसे ज्यादा अच्छे हाल में रहते हैं वापस आता हूं तो वहां के फूलों में वो खुशबू नहीं मिलती जो इस मिट्टी में हमें मिलती है। और मैं अच्छी तरह से इस बात में यकीन रखता हूं कि अगर मैं बहैसियत मुसलमान के, मैं अब यहां बैठा हूं मुसलमान हूं तो मुसलमान हूं, बहैसियत मुसलमान के अगर आप मुझसे पूछेंगे तो मेरे लिए इंडिया से अच्छी दुनिया में कोई दूसरी जगह नहीं है रहने के लिए। क्यों? मुझसे पूछ रहे थे तुम्हें अगर तुम्हारे सामने सवाल हो जाए कि पहले तुम्हारा रिलीजन है या पहले तुम्हारी कंट्री है, तुम्हारा देश है, तुम क्या करोगे? मैंने कहा मुझे बता दो कौन सी आंख को रखूं और कौन सी को फोड़ दूं। कितनी मुश्किल बात है कि तुम माँ से ज्यादा मोहब्बत करते हो या बाप से ज्यादा मोहब्बत करते हो, ये सवाल करना ही बेवकूफी की बात है। तो मैं एक बात जो अपनी इस देश की, इस सोसाइटी की खूबसूरती की बात है, हम लोग, अगर आप यहाँ के जितने मज़ाहिब हैं, जितने धर्म हैं, रिलीजन हैं, उनको देखेंगे आप उसको माने या ना माने, आप उसके ऊपर अमल करें या ना करें, लेकिन यहाँ की सोसाइटी में शायद हजारों साल से एक दूसरे का एहतराम करना इस सोसाइटी का हिस्सा है, एक दूसरे का रेस्पेक्ट करना इस सोसाइटी का, इंडिया का हिस्सा है। इसी वजह से यहाँ इस तरह की प्रॉब्लम, छोटे वाक़यात होते हैं। जैसे वो एक आर्टिस्ट थे, उन्होंने कुछ नंगी तस्वीरें बनाई, मुझसे लोगों ने सवाल किया, मैंने कहा कि मुझे ऐसा लगता है कि उनको अपनी बात के इजहार करने के लिए इसको नंगा करने की जरूरत नहीं थी, और उन्होंने नंगा किया है तो उन्होंने बाउंड्री को अपने क्रॉस किया है। अब जब बाउंड्री को वो क्रॉस करेंगे तो सब लोग तो समझदार नहीं हो सकते ना, कहां किस किस को आप रोकेंगे? अब उस लेवल तक आपको पहुंचने में कितना टाइम लगेगा? फिर ये कि हमें, अगर हम आर्टिस्ट हैं तो हमें आर्ट की रिस्पेक्ट करनी चाहिए, न कि वो आर्टिस्ट बन करके जो चाहेंगे डिसरिस्पेक्ट करेंगे। यही मैं कहना चाहता हूँ।
मैं आपको जाने दूं उससे पहले एक सवाल पूछता हूँ। एज अ स्कॉलर हु हैज अ लॉट ऑफ रिस्पेक्ट अमंग अदर रिलीजियस स्कॉलर्स, कभी आपने इस बारे में सोचा है कि वेदर यू कैन हैव अ कॉन्वर्सेशन विद स्कॉलर्स फ्रॉम अदर रिलीजन ऑन रिकंसिलिएशन ऑफ इश्यूज?
इसके ऊपर सोचा भी है और कुछ किया भी है, लेकिन अभी वो बहुत इंडिविजुअलिस्टिक है, व्यक्तिगत तौर पे किया है, लोगों से बातचीत करी है। और ये तो हमारा मिशन है, ये सिर्फ सोचने की बात नहीं है, ये हमारा मिशन है कि किस तरह से हम, पॉइंट है झगड़े का, एक पॉइंट है झगड़े का, और दूसरे 10 पॉइंट मौजूद हैं आपस में रिश्तों को मजबूत करने के और मोहब्बत करने के। जो हमारे पास 10 पॉइंट मोहब्बत करने के हैं उनके ऊपर हम बात नहीं करते, झगड़े के पॉइंट के ऊपर हम सारी बात करते हैं। तो पहले हम बात करेंगे जिन पर हम यूनाइट हो सकते हैं। अगर हम यूनाइट होने वाली इश्यूज के ऊपर ठीक से बात करने लगे, मैं यकीन से बताता हूं वो जो 1-2 पॉइंट हैं जिनके ऊपर डिफरेंसेस हैं हमारे बीच में, वो डिफरेंसेस भी आसानी से सोल्व किए जा सकेंगे। तो ये तो हमारा मिशन है, इसके ऊपर तो काम कर ही रहे हैं।
विश यू बेस्ट फॉर दिस। अशोक,
मुझे अगर इजाजत मिल जाएगी तो बहुत मेहरबानी।
हाँ बिल्कुल, थैंक यू। प्लीज गिव अ राउंड ऑफ अप्लॉज, ही हैज टू कैच अ फ्लाइट। Ashok, now I'm going to provoke you. Mr. Qureshi says that a book for a book is akin to eye for an eye.
Hello. Yeah. It depends on how, that's certainly not that wasn't my case, and I don't believe that was Mr. Vajpayee's case either, and I was quoting him. I guess what he meant was, and certainly what I meant was, there is a certain manner in which you can respond to even a provocative and distasteful argument. I'll give you one example. Some years ago, the Bhandarkar Oriental Research Institute, BORI, in Pune, which is a very well-known institute going back a century, was attacked by a group that called itself the Sambhaji Brigade, and objected to the, it destroyed a lot of manuscripts there, and it was a big loss to
Yeah,
Indian.
it was a huge destruction.
Yeah. And this vigilante group was protesting against a book called Shivaji the Maratha King by an American historian called James Lane. And James Lane had done some of his research in the Bhandarkar Institute. He was not associated with it. So the poor Bhandarkar Institute had no business being damaged, but it was. Now, I happen to have read James Lane's book. I have it at home, even though it's banned in India. Okay. But please don't tell the Sambhaji Brigade that. Now, I happen to have read that book. It's a very serious book of history. But there is a line there is a paragraph there, which says that, in the middle of a very, very serious book, which says that, which questions the paternity of Shivaji, which talks about whether Shahaji Bhosle was his father or whether somebody else was his father, and then offers no evidence apart from saying there is some belief in this going back to some satirical folk songs in parts of rural Maharashtra. Now, the evidence offered for what is a very serious allegation, charge, or fact, if it is seen as a fact, or a very serious part of that book. It's a very serious issue. The Shivaji's father was somebody else, and you're making a very big point. But the evidence offered is flimsy, really flimsy, and does not fit into the richness of a rigorously written historical text. So if Mr. Lane had been seriously challenged, if his publishers had been challenged that you claim to be a serious historian, offer us more evidence or cut this out, and challenge at a scholarship level, I'm fairly certain if he is even half decent or half serious academic or scholar, he would have said, yes, I have not cited enough facts or enough evidence to back up my claim, and I'll probably delete this from the next edition. So there is by book for a book, or argument for an argument, or tweet for a tweet, I certainly don't mean eye for an eye. I mean there is a formal structure and a formal framework in which you can respond to distasteful charges or charges you disagree with.
Mr. Patnaik, I wanted to come to you on the particular issue that you touched upon, which is the issue of what constitutes real freedom when you're writing, particularly as a publisher of newspapers, and what's happening in the media in terms of ownership. Is there some formula you have?
I'm talking about the writers. Literature is about language. Literature is about emotion. Emotion और language में आपको ये independence की बात नहीं आएगा. This is how you feel about something, how you write about it. For writing you need language. For feeling you need a lot of experience. The threat to literature is your language is incompetent. You are not competent. Our children are not competent enough either in English or in their own language. Average competence of an Indian young man is eroding. It is less. Natwar Singh is sitting here. His grandchildren will be much less competent than he is if they are product of the same schooling that they have gone through. Incompetent language and lack of experience is what our literature is suffering from. If we are worried about its independence and freedom, then these things should be addressed more than banning, laws, freedom.
Okay. Qureshi Sahab, I've got a sort of fatwa from the other end that I must wrap up this session. But nahin, आपको ऐसे कैसे छोड़ेंगे? So you said that the final thing should rest in the court because it is after all a matter of law. Ashok mentioned that in films there are cuts. In your experience, has there been any instance where a similar idea has been tried out in a court? There might be one passage in a book that is offensive. I mean, I dare say if I go to court about some book, it could drag for years. I must relate this incident to you. Hamish MacDonald's book, The Polyester King on Dhirubhai Ambani, was banned for several years. But for several years on the streets of Bombay, it was sold as pirated editions. And I happened to be interviewing Anil Ambani once in his car, and a young boy saw Anil Ambani and came and plastered the Polyester King book to him. Anil Ambani said, I don't have money to buy this book. And the young boy says, free mein de dega.
Yeah, you've raised 2 points here. One, which has been mentioned again and again, that a lot depends on how you say it. And kind of a self-restraint, self-censorship, which requires quite a bit of maturity of mind. And as I said, intention. About 15 years ago, I was asked by the UNFPA to write a strategy paper for family planning among the Muslims. Now, there were 2 ways I could have handled it. Blast them. These obscurantists living in what century, these guys are multiplying, they're producing so many children, and this was one way. I studied the issue for myself. Fortunately, when they were offering me a consultancy of about a couple of lakhs in 95, my inner voice said that I should do it gratis. First I said, look, I'm not an Islamic scholar, why are you asking me? And secondly, I've never been in health ministry to implement, except as a deputy commissioner or SDM when you implement this program. But then I imposed a condition that I'll do it free, and when they did not agree, we agreed on a sum of 1 rupee. But the whole process of, I knew it was a sensitive subject. Even whether it's a 1 rupee or 1 million, it is a financial transaction. We went through all that and we signed. And what I studied really opened my eyes. I found that Islam was not only not opposed to family planning, Islam was the original author of the concept of family planning 1400 years ago. When I was writing this book, many people warned me. That was the time when Salman Rushdie and Taslima Nasreen were in the news much more than they are now. They said, look, remember them and don't end up like that. I said, look, number one, I have no mischievous intention. I'm doing it very, very sensitively. And I studied the Quran, I studied the Hadith, and I had the advantage of the demography and every issue. And it came out to be a really game-changing thing. So I was able to, but at the same time, 4 years later, I was in London, living in a hostel with my daughter was studying there. I got a phone call from somebody who says he's Dr. Qureshi, President of Muslim Doctors Association of UK. And he said, we have read your paper and we have some issues to join. Surely I didn't want to get beaten up in London. So I wanted to wriggle out of the situation, and I said, yeah, look, I'm going on my flight. What time is your flight? He said, tomorrow 10 o'clock. They landed at the airport. 2 guys. Kitne aadmi the? 2 the. Par main akela tha. So, and the first statement they said, family planning is American or Western conspiracy against Islam, and they hire mercenaries like you to write such papers. If I had taken any money, that 1 rupee also I have not taken, then I would have been morally on a weaker pedestal. Then I pounced on them. I said, you discuss with me on the merit. And I would not go into the detail what was the argument, and I said, if you give me anything to the contrary, by all means. So therefore, one is quality of writing, how you write it, and the second is who is to arbitrate. Howsoever I may try to be objective, I'm bound to be subjective. And if there is a clash between you and me, obviously it has to be a third person. Whether it is a court of law, it is some independent mediator is what is required, who can give a very honest opinion. Therefore, we must have that kind of a mechanism, because if you leave it to us, then whosoever is physically stronger, that view will prevail, and that is not an ideal solution.
No question. Okay, all questions offline. I want to conclude this by saying the first threat to independent writing is the shaky foundation of independent thinking, whether really you're independent thinking independently and the intent is right, or it is perversity masquerading as independence. The second threat is, of course, political opportunism, and we still have a long way to go to deal with that. I thank all my panelists here. We have had an interesting discussion. Thank you, Ashok. Thank you, Mr. Patnaik. Thank you, Mr. Qureshi.
Like I had mentioned before, Tata Steel has taken special interest in this session. I had already mentioned that. Freedom of expression is strongly practiced and promoted in companies like Tata Steel. So I would now request Mr. Arun Mishra, the Vice President of Tata Steel, to come on stage and present mementos to our panelists on behalf of the company. Mr. Arun Mishra. That was a relevant question. Steel ka hai ki nahi? No, no, sir. Sir, you guys have a double bonanza. I'll request the editorial director of the New Indian Express now, Mr. Prabhu Chawla, to present mementos to our panelists. And the group photograph.